Hello, my name is David Worden. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about vibrato and lip trills. And I'm combining those two for a very good reason. They kind of work together. One can help the other. But let's start with just vibrato. I learned to play on a straight tone when I was young. That was commonly taught that way at the time. So I didn't learn vibrato until I was in college, really, to learn it the right way. In high school I experimented with it, but I did not know how to produce it. So I tended to do what they called a nanny-goat vibrato, which I didn't even like. Like that. Just shaking the same way you would if you were nervous in your throat. So that was not the right way to go. It's uncontrollable, it's too fast. In college, they taught me to use a lip vibrato. Brass players can do three types of vibrato. We'll start with the air vibrato, breath vibrato, diaphragm vibrato, some people call it, although I understand that's not really correct physically. But anyway, from down here somewhere, the vibrato is. Up here, I'm not going to do much of anything except to support what my air is doing as it pulses. So you'll see my chops move a little bit, but the actual vibrato is coming from here. That is commonly used by flute players, for example. Vocalists often use it. The one I learned in college is the lip vibrato. Now, we'll talk about jaw vibrato in a minute, where you're actually moving the jawbone up and down. But lip vibrato, the jaw stays stable and the lips just move. So the way to produce that is you're essentially pushing up a little bit with your bottom lip and then pulling down. Now, I kept my teeth clenched during that. So if you saw movement down below, it was probably just my chin responding to the muscle movement. My teeth were connected at that point. Fortunately, I have a lot of gaps in my teeth, so the air manages to get through anyway. But that was lip vibrato. It's pretty easy to control. You can go faster, slower, wider, and narrower. The third type, which is commonly used in Great Britain, I've noticed from players over there, where they grew up more with the whole culture of brass bands and a lot of vibrato in the brass bands. All the instruments use it, where in American ensembles, sometimes French horns, for example, don't use vibrato. Clarinets sometimes don't use vibrato. The brass in bands usually do. Trombones sometimes choose not to because they're thinking more of an orchestral style and they like that better. But in Great Britain, the vibrato is commonplace, and jaw vibrato probably is practical for them if you learn it from the beginning, because it's a little easier to make the jaw vibrato wide, and it probably is easier to do when you're tired, because you're not stressing the muscles here, not using them as much, which may get tired as you play a long period. You're using the larger muscles that move your jaw up and down, and your armature has to support that, but not create it. That wasn't a great example, sound-wise, because I'm not used to doing that, but that is how it's produced. So we'll continue to talk about the lip vibrato, which is what I use. My concept of vibrato is I like to have vibrato as a tool in I call it my tool belt. It's one of the tools in my tool belt, and it is not ever present. I don't use vibrato on every note. I don't use it in every passage. I like to control it, sometimes wider, faster, or slower, depending on the need of the passage. So in a simple passage like this, I might put vibrato on the top note and maybe the final note. I won't use vibrato on the passing notes because it gives it, to me, an unstable feeling. I because those shorter eighth notes don't have time to settle in as the vibrato cycles are going up and down. They can catch the note at different times, and you don't really probably get a full cycle unless you're going really fast. So for me, that's not comfortable. But then what you'll hear brass players do, and especially vocalists, they have a lot of tools that they use very well. They will withhold vibrato and then bring it in later on a note. So in a passage, let's try this. We'll do it first with no vibrato. So in the key I was playing, that was 5/7, 5/7, and then 5/1 to the tonic or the primary note. So we're leading up to that note. Because I'm repeating the 5/7, 5/7, I might do something like this with it. So withhold it on the first note, bring it in on the second note to give some variety between those two identical sets of notes, and then of course on the last note. So as you're developing the vibrato, start with a pure tone, play a simple musical passage is what I would suggest. I played that with no vibrato. I tried to put musical expression into it, a little more separation here and there, some crescendo, decrescendo. But I wanted it to sound good without the vibrato. I want to get a solid musical foundation, as though I were perhaps an American horn player who doesn't like to use vibrato. They would still make it sound musical. So that was my first goal. On that then, I have vibrato as a little added tool. I saved it for just the long notes in that case. As I mentioned, I don't like to use it on passing notes. But on the occasional passing note, I might want to use it. Let's say I want vibrato on just that note, in addition to the other notes that I had. But I want a little fast, short vibrato on that eighth note. Not much time to do it. So I want the flexibility to be able to do that in a very short time, all of a sudden. Now, your vibrato should be variable in speed and in width. So you can practice that on long tones, as I sort of demonstrated before. Start with a slow vibrato, gradually speed it up. As you speed it up, perhaps widen it, and then slow it down and go the other way. I wouldn't probably play any particular note that way in music, but it's a good exercise. Now, for some people, it's difficult to control the speed, and especially to bring it in quickly, as I did on that eighth note in the previous example. That's why I like to combine and talk about lip trills. So let's go on to that next, and this will relate back to vibrato. If you use a lip vibrato, you are halfway to having a lip trill. A lip trill, by definition, is a trill between two notes of the same fingering. Now, in some cases, that's going to make a very wide trill. For example, if I start on my middle B flat, a C in treble clef, I'm going to go up a major third, which is not a typical trill. So that doesn't sound like a trill, but we'll use that for an exercise. So because the basic motions are the same as vibrato, we'll start doing on the B flat, C in treble clef, some vibrato, gradually widen it until it starts to sound pretty bad that it's so wide. And I think you'll find at some point it will hop to the next note. So you can hear it trying to jump up to the note. It's gotten so wide, when you start to push the horn, at some point as you sharpen the note, it's going to hop to the next partial. And that's what's happening in that example I just did. So what we want to do then is learn to control that. So let's start slow, but with that same motion that I would use in vibrato, just wider and slower. In this case, I'm going to aim more for each note. In vibrato, you're not really aiming for anything in particular. So I'm going to go first note, aim for the second note, back to the first note, and so on. As I increase the speed, that'll be hard to do. We can't do aiming that quickly between two notes. So what I'll start doing at some point then is let the horn kind of take care of the notes. I will aim my lip right in between the two notes, or find that sweet spot where as my lip moves, it goes to the top note and the bottom note evenly. I think it's obvious that in the middle section where it got so fast, I would not be able to think about each note and change my chops to match the note. So I'm splitting the difference and letting the horn take care of that by its natural tendency to play one note or the other and nothing in between. Now, that's a quick explanation. I think if you practice it, you'll get there. You'll need then to move off of that comfortable middle note, and I like B flat because it's only a third up. An F might be more comfortable, the F below that, G in treble clef, but then you're going up by a fourth instead of a third, and it's a little harder. I still like to do it on the F though, and the notes around there, that fourth interval, because it helps to build some strength and control. As I go up now to the next open note, which is the D or E in treble clef, the interval instead of a major third is a minor third. It's a little closer, but now my lips have to work harder because they're a little more tight on the D. I hate to use that word, but the muscles actually are tightening somewhat. So going up from there is a little more work. Again, not usable as a trill. However, if we look at some alternate fingerings up there, and I have often had to do trills on an F. The problem with doing a trill on the F, you've got two fingering choices really in the natural horn. You can go up to 1 and 2 from the open, or up to 3. As you hear toward the end, I'm getting a tremolo, not a trill. The F can be played 1 and 2 or open. So since your lips aren't able to really keep up with that change, the note just won't cooperate quite like you'd like it to. Some people learn to trill those pretty successfully by moving their lips. They can't trill maybe quite as fast, but they learn to control it. And that's also a good skill to practice. But if you want a fast trill, what I would suggest is an alternate fingering. Now on a 4-valve horn like this, I like to use the 4th valve. It's pretty in tune on that note. It's a little lower, but most horns have a slightly high F, or a very high F, so using the 4th valve is actually better. So instead of going, I'm going to use my lip trill muscles with the 4th valve down. So I'm getting the right two notes by keeping the 4th valve down. You can modify that lip trill activity a little bit. You might start, for example, on the open natural note. Most trills start with a longer first note or a slower first note, but then immediately put the 4th valve down after you've planted the first note, and when you move to the second note, put the 4th valve down and leave it there. Something like that. So lip trills are a very handy tool. They're also a great way to build strength. And by getting good at lip trills, let's circle back now and talk about vibrato. As I mentioned, I like my lip vibrato to be flexible. Wider sometimes, faster or slower sometimes. In the example from Endearing Young Charms that I played earlier, the musical excerpt on the, well, it wasn't the top note, but the concert C or D in treble, I had to employ the vibrato very quickly to get it to act before I move off the note. Now, it's hard to tell what you're doing exactly with that. You could just start notes with a lot of vibrato and play a short note. But again, it's a little harder to hear if the notes are doing what you want them to, if the note is vibrating the way you'd like it to. So what I like to do is actually do lip trills quickly and with an immediate start to help develop that same skill in the lip vibrato. So I might play. Now if I can start the lip trill that quickly, I can start vibrato that quickly because it's the same muscles. They just don't have to move quite as far for the vibrato. I might also try to incorporate it into a held note when my tongue is not there to kind of start the pulse. So again, they're in those same places where the trill now is. I could insert some vibrato. So that exercise will help you with that. So those are the ways you can integrate your practice with vibrato and lip trills. And again, it helps build your strength and endurance, which is good. But it's also a more flexible tool in your toolkit, in your tool belt, right? Because you have vibrato now that can start immediately, can start gradually, can build up and so on. So as you work on the lip trills, those same skills will translate down to your vibrato. That's why I think they fit together. Let's see if you find that to be true. Thanks very much.